All right, well, let's get a couple more things here before we get going. Jim, I did want to ask you a quick question here that was sent to the Cult of Cornette Facebook group from a listener, James Bacon. Can you please explain...
Is that the Hollywood columnist, James Bacon?
I don't believe so. Can you please explain to someone in the UK what the difference between local access, cable, syndicate TV in the US is and was, and how it impacted the territories? All we had here in the UK until the late 90s were 4 national channels, and,
wow.
one of them showing local programs for only about 2 hours a day. Also, what's a feather bottom? No, let's talk, because, you never think about that. A lot of the international listeners and even a lot of the younger listeners may not understand what the landscape was like, and you throw a lot of terms out there: syndicated TV, local TV. I don't know how much we've talked about local access TV or public access, but I'll throw this to you.
Well, and first of all, I can vouch for when I was in the UK, there were many things. We've discussed my trips, and there were many pleasant things about it, but TV sucks over there because there's not that many channels in the hotel rooms, and the ones that you get are not really, most of them aren't even showing entertainment-oriented programs, news or talk or whatever. It's just dry.
I saw Raw when I was in London once. It was on late at night. It wasn't like the normal time slot. And they had, in the bottom corner, they had someone doing sign language. Because at one point, someone was getting choked and they were choking themselves.
Yes, they do that too, the sign language in the corner, whether you need it or not. But anyway, okay, so we joke about cable access. In the early days of cable, when your local cable system was bringing you not only your local stations, but also the satellite, the super stations like TBS or WGN out of New York or what, you might get 30 or 40 channels back in those days, all told combined. The early ESPN, MSG network, whatever the fuck it was. So they would also have, I think it might have even been required at that point by some kind of federal communications ruling, or just but the local cable company would provide a local access or cable access channel to people in the community for their own programming, community affairs, or local shit, supposedly some, to encourage, local artists or news or whatever discussion about the market. And it quickly became just these amateur fucks, hey kids, let's put on a show. There was actually on our old cable company here 20 years ago, I can't remember what it was back then, and it's become Spectrum, but there was a program on their cable access channel called I Eat Poop, the show.
The show?
Yes, the show. And it was just a bunch of fucking local kids with a video camera doing stupid shit with each other. And that's why I compare some of these AEW productions to cable access. But that's what that was. And wrestling in the territory days was never on cable access, not only because there wasn't a lot of cable in those days, but also because they always had real television in their markets. Local television means the actual television stations in your town. If we live in Louisville, when I was a kid, we had 3 television stations: Channel 3, Channel 11, Channel 32. And 32 came on the air the same fucking year I was born, 1961, so we only had 2 up until that point. And then we got WDRB, the independent station, in 1971. Point being, that was local television, those 4 stations. If the Memphis territory wanted to run Louisville, they had to get TV on one of those 4 stations, or nobody in town was going to fucking see it. So that's local television. And you could be doing a show just for that market, or you could be a promoter in Memphis doing a show and also get it on there. But you're still on local TV, but you're in several markets. When you get into syndication, that's not only, and really it's syndicated when you produce a program and you send it out to multiple stations. you're syndicating it across these stations. But it really wasn't the true meaning of syndication for the territories, because they only wanted the markets in their specific area that they were going to run live events in. A syndicated TV show like Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune that's been on the air, Family Feud, that's been on the air for years and years and years, that's produced with the idea of syndicating it to every local market in the United States. And that's what Crockett and Vince started doing opposite each other in the war in the 80s, because the rule of thumb then, I can't remember the exact percentage, but if you could get 75 or 80% of the country, your program available in those, not to say everybody was watching it, but it was available on enough stations where 80% of the country could get it, then you could sell national advertising and get big money for it, allegedly. And that's what they were trying to do. So it's varying degrees of local cable access for amateurs, local television for people who just wanted to broadcast to that market, regional syndication for the territories, and national syndication for the national promotions. And that doesn't even take into account any cable network whatsoever. Did that answer that question?
I think so. And I guess in terms of timeline, here in New York, for instance, by the late 90s, that's when they kind of started giving up on local syndication, which had been the most important thing for wrestling companies up until that point. Even with the cable penetration, it was the local TV that promoted the local shows. It was the local TV that spoke to the people in the market. And that was one of the big shifts, when it was kind of, let's just go with the cable stuff. We don't have to worry about a syndication package or anything.
Well, and that's also when guys lost the ability and the knowledge and the training to do local promos. When the shows were just being broadcast to everyone instead of that local market. That, when I tried to teach the Ring of Honor guys in 2000, 11, 12. Okay, here's how you do local promos. A lot of them took to it and they were, excited to have the opportunity. But it was like, okay, here's what you're talking about. Chicago, this match with these stipulations versus this guy. And make it local. Talk about people in Chicago, heels, knock their pizza, whatever. And they're like, oh, shit. And then when we would have the tapings, we would do 3 weeks worth at a time. So I would have all the fucking notes. I would draw them out with a Sharpie on copy paper as a slate for the cameraman. Okay, this is for air in Tampa, show number 46, break 2. And they would have to know not to talk about anything that had not happened as of show that number, break 2. And it was a learning experience for them. Anyway, that's and that was the same thing with Crockett, though. In the 80s, TBS was to make the stars, get the talent over, increase the exposure. But the local syndicated television in the markets in the cities across the country that they were running live events in, that's the ones where we did specific promos for this day, this night, and this building. And more people in that particular town were watching the syndicated wrestling program that were watching it on TBS, because more people could have an antenna and get it for free instead of pay the cable system and have cable in those days.